Okay, the Nintendo Switch. I want to talk about this thing because I legitimately hated this thing when it first launched. But now that it's sort of been out for, I don't know, what, like 5 or 6 months at this point, it's kind of crazy, but I've actually sort of fallen in love with it. Pretty much how it goes is you typically, with any new piece of tech, I guess, you sort of do your research, you maybe toss it in and out of your cart a bunch. Eventually, you buy it, and then you've got this sort of awesome honeymoon period with it where you just use it a ton. And for myself with the Switch 2, at least, that period never really started. And the thing about this tiny ass console is that I actually tried to return it to Best Buy, but this came with like a digital Mario Kart World game. It was a digital code, so I used it. So naturally, I actually couldn't return it, and I was pretty pissed off about it. I had huge buyer's remorse. Now, separately from that, fast forward just a little bit, I guess what sort of changed my mind was that my wife actually ended up buying me Cyberpunk 2077 for this system for our anniversary this year. And that game alone literally changed my entire perspective of this console. So what it turned out to be the issue, I guess, with this is that I'm not much of a guy to sort of just sit down and play Mario Kart alone. Mario Kart is an incredible game when you've got friends and family and you guys throw it up on a TV, you just have a good time, but sitting there playing Mario Kart alone, it wasn't really my vibe. I did end up getting into it just a little bit anyways, but Mario Kart sort of threw me off with this console entirely from launch. Now, just for reference, I'm typically the type of guy who plays a ton of online games. I'm going to be playing fast-paced shooters like Overwatch and Marvel Rivals. Sometimes I'll be pushing competitive rank in those games, and other times I'm going to be playing these addictive-ass games like World of Warcraft maybe for a little bit. Nothing's wrong with those games, mind you. What I can say about those sort of games is that the key thing is that they're all online, and I guess they just have a different vibe entirely. I think where the shift is for me, and in one of my recent videos, I actually spoke about it heavily, about sort of my time with my PlayStation 5 and PS5 Pro, and sort of just consoles in general, and how I've sort of more personally just been leaning more into console gaming as of late. As a whole as well, whether it's going to be, related to gaming or not. And I'm just trying my best to sort of slow down this year entirely, and not really have my foot on the gas pedal the entire time, go, nonstop. And I find sometimes those online games sort of trigger me. They might piss me off if I get dunked on by a 12-year-old or some shit. But those games sort of rev me up versus slow me down. So that's why I've been, gearing more towards consoles, I guess. I'm not sure if this relates to anybody else, but for myself, I spend, 10 to 14 hours a day literally using a mouse and keyboard. And sometimes I just do not want to touch a mouse and keyboard after a long day. So something like picking up a controller and playing some games, making some good coffee, whatever the case may be, is probably my favorite way to decompress. For me, that just puts me into a much better headspace. And what I can say, at least about the Switch 2 entirely, is that when it comes down to these games, or why it's a little bit more special, is because the games on this console, specifically the Switch, probably even the Switch 1, which I'll sort of talk about, but the games on the Switch series, Nintendo in general, I think focus more on the fun aspect. And that's sort of something that I've been missing over the last while when it comes down to my games, is just letting them be fun. Like naturally, obviously when you think about the Switch 2, it is going to be a handheld, apart from when it's docked, of course, but it's not going to be as powerful as even my Xbox or my PlayStation 5. Definitely not going to be as powerful as something like my PC, but the games and the experience on here are simply flippin' fun, is the best way I can put it. And it really sort of just reminds me of when I was a kid, almost, where the games technically looked awful half the time, frankly. My Pokemon Crystal looked like trash compared to my Spyro on my PlayStation 1. Granted, both games were super fun, but I found, the games on Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and my Game Boy were just super geared towards having a good time. They didn't really focus on fidelity. They didn't focus on pushing the envelope when it comes down to technical marvels or whatever. They were just a good, fun-ass game. Now, with that, quickly, I do want to give Meraki a huge thanks for sponsoring a portion of today's video. For any of my coffee nerds out there, I'm huge into coffee. You might see me make a coffee pretty much multiple times in almost every single video I make. A huge part of my whole wind-down routine in the evening is to make myself a nice hot beverage. And Meraki did send out their new espresso machine, which is absolutely bonkers. Now, for myself, this Meraki Espresso Machine, it's been a literal real step up in my coffee bar here, because it easily replaces my entry-level Breville Duo Temp and my Baratza Encore grinder. The wannabe minimalist in me loves having sort of this all-in-one vibe. Now, who this thing might be really for, it's going to be for the people who sort of want that cafe quality at home without really needing the whole full barista skill set. So this thing really is an all-in-one machine. So that's going to be things like grinding, weighing, extraction, and even steaming your milk, which is a bit of an art form. Now, the biggest change for me coming out of a position like this, and this is getting a little bit nerdy for my coffee folks out there, my Breville system has a vibration pump. So every time I make a latte, because it was just simply too loud. This does have a commercial grade rotary pump. So what that means, it's going to be quieter, but it's also going to be more consistent when it comes down to extracting those espresso shots, which I really appreciate. And the best word to describe everything coming out of this machine is simply consistent. Something I love about this system as well is it does have a dual PID and a dual boiler system, meaning you can pull your shot as well as steam your milk at the same time, which is pretty awesome. What I can say as well, that the built-in grinder is co-engineered between Timor and Meraki. If anybody's huge into the coffee scene, Timor actually makes some incredible burrs for grinding coffee. And again, this goes on to the embedded scale, so your brew weight shows in the real time. Steaming milk as well can be automatic or manual as well. I'm personally team manual because I just like steaming milk and getting a little bit better at it, but the auto mode still gives you silky microphone every single time. So yeah, for the times I'm really trying to get into my gaming, pretty much from bean to cup in like 4 or 5 minutes, and it's my favorite way to decompress at the end of a long day. Just some nice coffee, some nice games. If you do want to check this thing out, I will have a link down below. It really truly is an incredible machine. And thanks again to Meraki for sponsoring this portion of today's video. Now, right now at least, and I'm guessing since you clicked this video, it might count for a lot of you watching this as well. And it's that gaming is probably one of the best ways for a lot of you, apart from myself, to just vibe out, chill, relax, and sort of decompress, like I mentioned. And as a dad of 2, being in school and having my day job and all that, I just don't have a lot of time to game. So that's where having, I don't know, a few moments piece to just sort of melt into my games is, I don't know, it just means a lot to me. If that sounds corny, hopefully you can relate to my corniness, but that's just how it is for me. From a gaming standpoint as well, as somebody who also owns the Nintendo Switch OLED, I was actually really surprised in the leap of performance coming from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2. Granted, I guess that's like a 8 or 9 year gap. I don't even know when the Switch 1 came out. I'm actually gonna look this up right now. When did the Switch 1 release? Holy shit, 2017. The Switch 1 released in 2017. So and that's March 3rd, 2017. So we're going on like, fuck, what's math? 5.5, 6 years? 6 years? So hold on, 8, guys, I can't do math. I'm an accountant and I can't do math. That's like 8.5 years of Switch 1. So, before I did that research in the mathematics, I thought that was a much smaller gap. So now the performance increase sort of makes a lot of sense going into the Switch 2, but that's still surprising to me how much better the Switch 2 is graphically over the Switch 1. Now, sometimes with something like this, it really is just the simplicity behind the system as a whole. It really is truly just plug and play. You don't got to mess around with any sort of settings, drivers, nothing. You plop it in your dock, you just press the power button on the top end, handheld, and you're gaming. You literally just turn it on and you're having a good time. And for me, that actually has a huge tangible benefit. Now, one of the things that I don't quite get with this is that I don't understand why this thing shipped with Mario Kart World. Again, I know a lot of people really dig Mario Kart, but for me, it almost put me off from this console entirely. And it should have more than definitely shipped with Donkey Kong Bonanza. That game is actually a really good time. And it's even, I think right now it might be a Gamer of the Year nominee because it really is a flippin' good game. And for myself, it's one of those games that my 5-year-old and I really love to play. Her and I both are huge into Astrobot on the PlayStation series, and we have a great time playing with that. And the other day we were down here playing on the projector, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and she loves games like that. So it's kind of bonkers that, my 5-year-old can love a game that also I love, and we're both playing it in our own different ways, I guess. And to me, that's sort of magical, as lame as that can sound. But that just goes back to the whole thing about these games being fun, like I mentioned. Now, apart from these games focusing on the whole fun aspect, that isn't to say these aren't graphically magnificent, because even handheld, the games look flipping good. I think it's 1080p, variable refresh rate and all that stuff. I'll sort of touch on that. But once you throw this thing into the dock, it's even more surprising how this actually looks in the whole 4K setup, which is actually super badass considering the size of this console. Now, with that, I can say I'm pretty much entirely new to the entire Switch thing. Like, I had the Switch 1 OLED, and I pretty much only played one game on there, which was Pokemon Arceus. And I sort of gotten more into Switch games with the Switch 2, with all the ports and stuff, and I'll sort of talk about that as well. But I'd love to hear your recommendations. Please let me know some of your favorite Nintendo Switch games. It could be a Switch 1 game. I'm going to play it on the Switch 2, but I want a game where it's 10 out of 10. You can't put it down. Leave me your recommendations because I'm new to this whole Switch thing. And for me right now, it's going to be, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Cyberpunk 2070, and I never finished Pokemon Shield. That game actually looked like trash on the Switch 1. I couldn't get down with it. It actually looks fantastic on the Switch 2. So I'm looking forward to actually making my way through that. Now, is this system perfect? No, absolutely not. Frankly, one of my biggest gripes about this thing has got to be the price of the games in the first place, which has gotten sort of wild, if I'm completely honest. Now, I am stoked that games can still be bought physically, since I recently just got back into physical games entirely. I canceled my PlayStation Plus, I canceled my Game Pass, and I don't even know what Nintendo has. There's some sort of Nintendo online thing, but I'm not going to get that naturally. I've gone back to physical games because they can actually be bought at a discount, whether used. There's this local mom and pop shop near me where I go, and I just buy my games used at a huge discount. So I really dig that. So yeah, these games are getting flipping expensive, boy. And I said this in my last video when I was talking about the PlayStation 5, is that y'all got to hit up your local library, because you'd be surprised. That thing is practically blockbusters in today's day and age. You can actually go there, buy up, or not buy, you'd rent a bunch of movies. They got games. So I was there, last week? They had a bunch of Switch games, PlayStation, Xbox. So just something to be mindful of. But getting back to the Nintendo Switch, I want to talk about one of my favorite things about this system. And this actually also goes with the Switch One. And it's that gaming on here is simply so accessible. What I mean by that specifically is that between the dock or playing handheld, or otherwise even if, I don't know, it's propped up on a table or whatever, there's just so many ways to play on this thing. And I really dig that personally, at least. I just have an infatuation with moving around any small tech I possibly can, whether that's, a laptop, a tablet, whatever the case may be. And I just love using this thing wherever I could go. Now, despite this thing being handheld, I do want to talk about the dock a little bit. And kind of crazy, I don't know what the hell's wrong with me, but when I first got it, I got it the first week it launched. I actually didn't set the dock up for like 2 or 3 months. I don't know why I didn't, maybe because I just wasn't vibing with Mario Kart or whatever the hell. But man, the performance increase you get when you put this thing into the dock is kind of crazy, and I just wasn't really expecting. That isn't really to say that the handheld is bad whatsoever, graphically at least, but when it's docked, honestly, it's just so much smoother and more crispy. And for myself, this was night and day in a game like Cyberpunk. I just wasn't expecting it. The only thing that has me a little bit concerned is that, again, I'm not throwing down these massively long sessions on here, but I'm assuming the battery life could probably be a little bit better on here. There are times where I'm, vibing out on Hogwarts Legacy or Cyberpunk, and I can see the battery life just draining. So I started carrying around a bit of like a battery brick with me. Not that I go everywhere with this thing really, but I have a little spare battery thing from Charge. It's pretty sweet at keeping this thing topped up whenever I need to, at least. But naturally as well, I sometimes play on my 4K monitor, which is an OLED screen with built-in speakers. And this does a whole lot for the whole gaming experience. But also playing on my projector, I'll typically play games at maybe 4K 60 FPS or 1440p at 120 FPS. And the fact that that's even possible on a handheld, it's just impressive. The only thing that sort of irks me a little bit about the whole dock, I guess, is that they're so flippin' expensive. And I personally would love to have a second one. So I don't know if they make third-party docks. I heard Nintendo does this tomfoolery with the codes or some crap between, how the Switch talks to the dock and you can't get third-party docks. If you guys know about a third-party dock, let me know where I can find one, because I would love to have one for the living room. Still, either way, playing handheld on here whenever I'm not docked has been a good time. With that, I have to say I love how well this thing still performs in handheld mode, or otherwise just propping it up anywhere I go whenever I have a few minutes to dive in. Sometimes it's going to be a couple minutes before bed. It could be propped up on the dinner table or wherever else, really. It just simply allows me to sort of catch a breath wherever I need to throughout the day. I originally thought the kickstand was kind of flimsy by feel, but it turned out it's actually pretty robust, so it's not really anything to worry about. And I've also mentioned this when it comes down to other setups and stuff between, the whole desk setup versus TV setup and stuff. And I just appreciate I guess the social aspect of this system when you're gaming on a TV with like family and friends or whatever. It sort of makes me feel like an old man, honestly, but it's just one of those things that it reminds me of the good old days, I guess you can call them, when we just chill out and play N64 or something. And so far the Switch 2 sort of has a similar vibe. Otherwise, I still just love tossing this thing into my desk setup or maybe my projector, same as I would on my PlayStation or my PC or whatever, and just get lost into my own games and stuff, so I really do enjoy it. And while I personally don't really count frames, especially on a system like this, the performance on here, impressive enough for myself. I'm the type of guy who loves the Xbox Series S, which a lot of people hate it, I guess, for some reason, and this feels similar, if not better, than the graphical experience on my Xbox Series S. So that's definitely saying something. Now, separately from that, I want to talk about some of the things I love about this thing, as well as some of the things I don't love all too much. The first thing I have to say, honestly, is how far the flippin' games have come, especially on the Nintendo Switch 2. Again, I really could not get into the Switch 1. The games during that time, I guess, just weren't really my thing. Now, the way studios are porting games over to the Switch 2, I'm guessing because they're powerful enough, at least. Cyberpunk, flipping Hogwarts Legacy, Donkey Kong Bonanza is a Nintendo game, but that thing is sick anyways. And I just love seeing the ports coming to Switch 2. Apparently Elden Ring might be a thing. And as much as I've been dogging on the price of games when it comes down to the Switch and stuff, kudos where it's due. I got Hogwarts Legacy Deluxe with all the add-ons and all that crap for like 13 bucks Canadian through the actual Nintendo store. So as much as I want to buy my games physically and get those physical game discounts, there are going to be some solid ass deals through the Nintendo store. 13 bucks is kind of bonkers. So that was an insta buy for me. That game's in like my top 10. I love that cozy ass chill game. Swell on the Switch 2 so far. So I figured I would mention like that. Now, when it comes down to something like the Joy-Cons, I do have a bit of a love-hate relationship with them. I seriously love how much larger they are in the hand this time around by comparison to the Switch 1. There were literally times I stopped playing on my Switch OLED because the Joy-Cons were just too damn small. So having them larger as they are now, I really do appreciate them. What I don't get really is how they didn't upgrade the joysticks on here. I know a lot of people have talked about that already, so I don't really have to go deep into that. They didn't update the joysticks themselves to Hall effect or whatever. Huge bummer on that, Nintendo. I think we could have done better. And surprisingly, despite not being an OLED display, the LCD on here, they actually did a damn good job. I think this does like HDR10 or whatever, I guess depending on the games you play or whatever it is you have going on. But the screen on here is actually incredibly bright. Not that I'm really playing outside much, but when I am gaming handheld, it looks really good and I don't have any complaints about it. So whatever sort of magician work they did on that LCD, well done. Sort of a sidestep from the display, and it's sort of a no-brainer as to what I love about the system, in that it really is just all in one. Like, I don't need a TV. I don't have to use the dock. I really can play all my flipping games straight up through the system itself, the built-in speakers. I think this has a microphone. I don't really play online on the Switch at least, but it's all there. This is all you need to sort of play through a really good experience, full game-wise, which is pretty badass. And that sort of takes me back to talking about the physical games on here. Apparently, you can go into a store, ask for a physical game, and you open up the case and it's a game code. That pisses me off. If I get one of those, I'll be pissed. I hope there's some sort of indicator on the case about, you know, digital code or an actual cartridge. If I want to buy a physical game, I want a physical game. None of this card in the case crap. And one of the other things I don't like about the system, and it's a pretty big one for me, frankly, and it's that it just lacks multi-purpose. As much as I love this for just focusing on gaming, as I do all my consoles, they don't do, you know, alt-tabbing to browsers. It doesn't have emails and all that stuff. I would have loved to see some more apps on this system. One of the things I love as a wannabe minimalist is tech that can sort of double as something else. For me, that's going to be things like music apps like Apple Music or Spotify, or media like Netflix and so on. I truly would have just loved to see it on this system, but maybe that's something I can hope for in the future. Often whenever I'm gaming, I want to be able to vibe out and play games while listening to music and all that. So I'm bummed it's not on here. And even if I'm not gaming and wanting to listen to music, imagine just vibing out with your Switch in bed watching Netflix or something. That would have been magnificent, but it's not there, sadly. Now, before this video rambles on way too long, I sort of touched on it earlier, but I want to talk about how I've sort of grown out of chasing specs or caring about specs in every fashion like I used to. Honestly, for something like the Switch 2, it's going to be far worse than my gaming PC. It's going to be worse than my Xbox, my PlayStation, on paper and in practice, frankly. But I don't know, as I've gotten a little bit older, at least, power hasn't really been the end-all, be-all for me, I guess, at this point. With a system like this, at least, you're not really chasing native 4K or even the highest frame rates in games that already exist. And I can definitely appreciate all of that, naturally, of course. But even as somebody with a beastly RTX 4090 PC, I find myself using my Switch 2 or my PlayStation 5 or even my Xbox Series S simply for the gaming experience alone. Between life's responsibilities, being a dad of two, work and school, and just about everything else I gotta sort of grind throughout the week, like a lot of you, I'm sure, I'm really just not chasing every frame anymore or pixel peeping. All I simply want, especially out of a console like this, is just to be able to throw down 10 minutes of games and get a moment's peace. And it goes back to the whole controller experience as well for me. Just a simple aversion to using a mouse and keyboard after so many hours daily makes the Joy-Cons look amazing. Or something like a Pro controller I would consider picking up. If you guys have suggestions, let me know. I would be looking for an awesome Pro controller. And yeah, despite the shortcomings I mentioned, as much as I would love to see apps on here similar to my PlayStation or whatever the hell, when I turn this thing on, I'm not doing anything except gaming. I'm not checking messages, I'm not checking emails, I'm not alt-tabbing to YouTube, I'm not doing anything else except gaming. And that's something that, I don't know, I just appreciate the simplicity behind it. Of course, this thing does less than my PC, for example, and it might be kind of corny or pretentious, but there's something sort of nostalgic behind that, where you just turn on your N64 or PlayStation 1 or whatever else, and you just sort of get lost in whatever game you're playing. For me, at least, it sort of hits that same sort of vibe at times, and I know a lot of people love the Switch, and some people absolutely hate the Switch. Some PC fans might dunk on consoles in general because they don't multitask, and all of that is simply okay. When you're a tired-ass dad at the end of a long day, or your brain is fried from an entire day of classes, whatever the case may be, the Switch gives me 15 minutes of gaming and peace, and that's all I can really ask from it. Now, this video isn't me trying to convince you to buy a Switch 2. For a lot of people, this simply ain't it. For the longest time, it wasn't it for me, I guess. For a lot of people, you might be better suited to having a PC or something, but for myself, I just want gaming to feel simple and fun. And right now, at least, that's sort of how the Switch 2 looks to me and where I'm at. But yeah, before I ramble on more and fanboy over console that everybody has already reviewed to death, I figured I'd just give the take from a wannabe minimalist who's a tired-ass parent who just wants to game. And for the most part as well, what I've spoken about across this can be said for a lot of the other consoles. It can be said for the Switch 1, depending on who you are. Either way, it's taken me a while to sort of see the hype behind the whole Nintendo Switch, and I'm definitely here for it. If you guys have watched this long, thank you for sticking out to the end. Again, I would love to hear your suggestions on Pro controllers. I actually need one of those must-play games. Please let me know what I have to play on the whole Switch, because I'm new to all of these games. And if anybody knows about third-party dock, I don't even know if they exist. I'm getting nowhere on Google. Appreciate you guys watching till the end. Until next time.